Welcome to the schedule that Jayden Daniels built. Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media. That's Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I have a schedule analysis up on ESPN.com right now. Every NFL team and NFL reporter has that same thing up on ESPN.com right now. So go give it a read. One-stop shopping. You can learn about not just the Commander schedule, but what the other reporters think about their particular team schedule. We talk about like bold predictions. You have key stretches, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So up on ESPN.com. All right, today I'm doing a 5 things I think, but we've got to start with the schedule because as I'm recording this, the schedule is out, and I got word of it certainly much earlier, so everything should be up on ESPN.com. But now, anyways. Let's talk a little bit about the schedule. I'm also going to go into defensive end talk, Trey Hendrickson, and then a few other topics as well. And I wanted to address Hendrickson because, once again, he is out there making news. Could this mean anything for the Commanders and why I think it would be difficult for sure? Reasons maybe that you hadn't thought of at this point. Anyways, stay tuned for that. Let's get to the Commander schedule because, again, by the time you hear this, you will know what the schedule is. So I'm not going to go over game by game. We can put the schedule up on the screen for those who haven't seen it, but I do want to highlight a couple of things. And obviously the primetime games is the number one issue, or not number one thing that jumps out with the schedule. And that's a testament to Jayden Daniels and where this franchise has come in such a short period. 5 primetime games. Ties the most by the franchise in their history. They'll also have 10 games that would be considered in a national window. Folks, this is what people wonder, like, why don't they get respect? Why don't they get this or that? It's because they didn't have this to sell before, and now they do. Now you have Jayden Daniels who can sell. That's why they're playing in Spain, and that's why they're playing all these primetime games. Yes, it was nice that they were 12-5, but they were 12-5 with an exciting rookie quarterback that people really like and gravitate to, which is basically how his teammates feel him too. Like they gravitate to him, but fans do as well. And this is the result. The days of 1:00 kickoffs, a lot of them probably could be done for a little bit, but I think like when you look at it, there's how many 1:00 games right now? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 1:00 games scheduled. One of which is on Christmas Day against the Cowboys. So that's what we got here. I did, it's funny because I talked to somebody at the organization earlier in the day and we talked about the schedule. It was, hey, blame Jayden. And of course there was laughter with that. It's not, this is what everybody wants, right? You want to have a team that's popular and good. Those are the 2 things that put you on primetime games. Now you have to go out and do it. You have to go out and win and get, to keep building on that. If you go out there and have a mediocre year, well, okay, you're on primetime games, but did you build on the success of the first year? Well, we'll find that out during the season. Yes, it is a tough schedule. The rest of the NFC East teams play a tough schedule, and I do believe that the Commanders of the NFC East teams, I believe their schedule is the easiest. That doesn't mean it's an easy schedule, just of the hard schedules in the NFC East, the winning percentage is that, but like, who knows year to year? Like it certainly looks very difficult for sure. But that's what happens when you're good. And they also play a strong division in the NFC West this year. So the thing that I worry about is being exhausted by the end of the year. Not just me. I do think I will be. Listen, folks, at the end of last year, it was exhausting because of 4 straight road games, all these night games, having to, taking a night game early, no sleep and all that. But it was an exciting period, right? But when you look at this schedule, they have a stretch where it's a Monday night game, a night game against the Bears, 4:25 in Dallas, Monday night game against the Chiefs, Sunday night against Seattle, then a 4:25 against Detroit, then you're going to Madrid, and you're coming back with a night game after the bye week, another night game against Denver. And then who knows that, there are a couple of games that could get, changed late in the year. So, or in terms of time. So that's a lot. And, when you're traveling as much as they are, and you're playing all these night games. What does it take out of you? I felt like they were a very fresh team going into last year, right? Or going into late in the season last year. Will that still be the case this year? But I also think it's why it was good to build all this depth. Anyways, the finish, four straight division games at the finish, that could be good or bad, depending on how you look at it. If you're in a hole, it's really good because you can make up more ground that way. It's tough because you're playing Philly twice in the last 3 weeks. So, again, going to Spain, like I think that's a pretty cool thing. I will say, coming out of the owners' meetings, and even like a week or so later, you kind of felt like maybe that probably was not going to happen. In fact, it certainly seemed like it wasn't going to happen at that point. And I don't know that the league changed its mind, or maybe some people here just they didn't know and they just assumed. But at one point it was like, yeah, it was. They kind of felt it was unlikely but there was a chance, and then they're going over there. So I I, I think it's a good thing. Like the league clearly sees Jayden Daniels as a face they can sell. Now he did go overseas to France earlier this year. I believe he was supposed to go to Spain, and then that trip was moved to France. That's that was clearly they wanted to sell him on the international level, and I think there are definitely some who I think if they had their druthers would have said like, well, let's wait till next year to get these international games because they knew how many primetime games they would have. And then it just complicates all the travel. I think with Dan Quinn and Adam Peters, I think they're kind of like they embrace whatever. And I think Quinn certainly has that mindset that he's not going to sit there and get caught up in like, oh, we're playing this and this and this, and then you got to go overseas. I think his mindset is, okay, this is the week, this week we do this. Today we do this. I think that's a mindset that served him well last year. If you remember, I thought he was as good a coach as I've covered, probably along with like Schottenheimer, a lot of that with not looking ahead beyond today and not feeling like the league is against them, like, or had something against them, right? By doing this, like, so I think he's the right coach to handle this kind of a setup. Anyways, I think with Spain, it's a good chance for this organization and to go over there. It's a good chance for the league to sell Jayden Daniels. And it's funny because like over the last week, you really kind of heard like, okay, there's not just a chance, there's a really good chance. And then you start to hear like, okay, it's happening. So, anyway, good thing for them, man. Again, you want a popular team, you got one. And I think that is a good thing. So I will say from a reporter standpoint, the only when you have these kind of games, like I'm going to be tired, folks. So I've got to be in better shape going into the season to handle this kind of grind because it's not just, that's why I say it's not just the primetime games for the team, right? I know, you don't care about my health during the season, and I don't either, to be honest, because it doesn't matter to the season, right? But I want to stay fresh. However, for the team, I would say like that's the one thing I would look at is how do you make sure you keep them fresh during the season because of all, again, the travel. I mean, you're going to Green Bay, you have Green Bay, you're at Kansas City, you're at the Chargers, you're in Spain. I mean, this at Minnesota, like these are longer trips. And when you're doing that, and then you're playing all these primetime games, it does take something out of you. And so I just wonder how they'll handle that. I do think this is a good team, a team that's equipped to handle certain situations for sure. But I also think that it's something that bears watching. And I think it's good that they've built up depth along the fronts because I think you're going to need it. And not that you're not playing more games. I just wonder how the toll of the travel and all these games, what kind of takes, what it does to them. But number two, I think when you look at last year's schedule compared to this one, there's a dramatic difference, right? Like there was for a reporter, there were 2 months where we did not go on a plane. I think they did go to Philly on that. However, like there were no long trips for like 2 months. The road games were Philly in October, November. The road games were Baltimore, New York, Philly. Like that was a good schedule for them. And it was conducive to, I think, what they did, which is finish really strong. I think there's a reason why end of games they executed so well and why they finished so strong. They won 7 in a row going into that Philly NFC Championship game. Like there's a reason for that. And they looked like a fresh team late in the year. For a team that didn't have a bye until late, they look like a fresh team. The good thing for them is they do have the bye earlier, But last year, I felt like that helped them. Doesn't mean that, and I think what hurts them this year is not just all those other factors. It's just a tougher schedule. And, like look at the last six games. You have Denver, Minnesota at the Giants, which could be very tough. Like they'll, if nothing else, I think they'll be more competitive. Yeah, and we saw they were competitive against this team last year, right? So then you have Philly, Dallas at Philly. Like that's a tough, tough finish. Um, I mean, it's, you're facing, I think it's out of the top, I think it's like eight, 7 games against defenses that finished in the top 10 in scoring. That's tough, which is why I'm glad that they built the offense the way they have and what the emphasis they put on improving that offense as well this offseason, because you can't assume that it's like, oh, you're just going to be it's good. They're facing better teams as well. So, but I think that middle of the season really helped keep them fresh. Now, early in the year, tough. The other thing I'm curious about with this schedule too is they the desire had been to spend a week in LA, right? Now, will they still do that? Well, they are playing at Atlanta the week before LA. So I don't know that they're going to go from Atlanta to the West Coast. They could easily just come back here, spend it here, and then go out on Friday. Last year they went from Cincinnati to Arizona. Not quite as long a flight, of course. But I think the druthers had been to go to spend the week in LA. However, the other factor is how much time do you spend in Madrid? They are still figuring that out. They don't know. So if they're going to spend the week in Madrid, I don't think they spend the week in LA. If they only spend a few days in Madrid, maybe they spend the week in LA. And I don't know what they're going to do with that yet. I don't know that Miami knows either. So I think it probably depends on what the Dolphins do, and you try to match that. Certainly you don't want to be going over there on Thursday night if the Dolphins are going over there on, let's say, Monday night or Sunday night, right? So I think that's the one thing we just don't know yet when they're going to go over there. But these are things that you have to, obviously have to plan out. And I think they're still deciding what is the best thing to do for both of those weeks. And they were so big. Quinn was so big on emphasizing that week in Arizona and how much it helped them bond as a team. Now, the players felt like they had a bond before that. However, I think it strengthened it. And he talked about like walking by rooms and seeing guys in there studying, like the quarterbacks in the, meeting in their rooms and watching film and et cetera. So like and going to lunch, going to dinner with each other, like that stuff adds up because they do get some of this in training camp, but it's not quite to the level it used to be back in the day. So some guys who've been around, like how do you create those bonding situations? And especially the Arizona one was early in the year. Like you can get that in Madrid, but we're talking middle of the season at that point. And you can get it like by going on the road. They play the preseason, by the way, is at New England, then Cincinnati, then Baltimore. So at New England, they'll have the joint practice. So you can go up there early and you get a little bit of it there too. But you're not going to get the same. Like last year, the Arizona trip was going into week 3. So that was an early season bonding session. Now, the other factor is this team, the bulk of this team will be returning. So do you need it to the same level that you did last year? Well, maybe not. So that's one of those, that's a good thing. But I do think like that's something that Quinn certainly puts an emphasis on. And so we'll see how they handle that. So anyways, those are some schedule thoughts. It is tough, but again, I think this team will be better. Here's the other thing, like my bold prediction for ESPN was they win 3 of their last 4 games to get in the playoffs. It'll be the first time they clinch a playoffs, they earn a playoff spot in consecutive years since 1991, 92. They exercised a lot of demons last year. That's the next one. This is how you build a consistent winner is by not just having the one really fun, exciting year last year, is by then repeating a certain level of success. To win 12 games and go to the NFC Championship game, that's a hard thing to do. Can you match that? Sure. But will you? Should that be the expectation? I think that's something we'll talk about as we go forward. But to me, if they win 10 games and make the playoffs, that's a very good year as well, because it'd be the first time they've won back-to-back or had back-to-back years with double-digit wins since 1989 to 91, right? They had 3 years in a row with that. So that would be another accomplishment for this franchise. I know they play one more game, but still, like that would be an accomplishment for them as well. And with this team, you get to the playoffs who knows what can happen with this quarterback. The other part of that too is, to me, when you look at this offensive line going into, if they get to that point, right, you get to the playoffs. Well, I think with this offensive line, you Cosme back. Let's say he comes back in some point in October. Well, you would think that by the end of the year, this line should be hitting a really good stride, right? You have a rookie, most likely rookie right tackle in Connolly. I would say Brandon Coleman would be a left guard, and then you have Cosme coming back in at right guard, right? How long will it take that group to gel and then to get to where they need to go, or to be the effective level they want to be? You'd have a rookie right tackle, got to adapt. You'd have Coleman playing guard for the first time in the NFL. So he's played in the NFL, which is great. He's got that year, but now it's a new position in the NFL, right? He's played it before, but it's now in the NFL. So there will be an adjustment period for him. Is this a group that will just continue to get better and better and better down the stretch? I felt like the line down the stretch last year, it took a step back. Maybe you get the opposite this year, and maybe down the stretch you get a stronger run game, stronger pass protection, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think like that could be a good thing heading into the postseason, and you have quality backups in this scenario, quality backups in Allegretti and Andrew Wiley, among others. So I think they'd be in a good spot with that line going down the stretch. So, anyways, there you go. That's schedule talk. Now, number three, let's get to the defensive ends talks. I think the Trey Hendrickson issue in Cincinnati is interesting, but I think for those who want to see these guys trade for him, I think it would take a lot, right? And it's not just about price. I think there's a lot of things to consider here. And I know we've talked about this a few times. I don't even know how is he really available in terms of like what Cincinnati's willing to do. They still seem intent on keeping him around and really testing his resolve at least. He needs a raise. Like, I mean, it's not getting that much money for a defensive end, and rightfully so. You would want one, right? So I don't blame him there, but they're going to test his resolve and see, can you come to a resolution? It's rare when you see a guy request a trade in his situation who then is granted a trade. Deebo Samuel requested a trade, but the Niners were pretty much done with him. So it wasn't hard for them to say, yeah, it's time to go. Before, when he asked them, no, they didn't want to trade him because he was still very useful for them. And they didn't have other options like maybe they feel they do now. But the point is, it's hard to have that accommodated. So I think you can look at Hendrickson saying, okay, there's clearly an issue going on there, right? And then it's like, what would be the cost right now? I think right now it'd be still expensive. Don't know yet really what does that mean. And so I still think Cincinnati finds a way to figure it out. So what would it take to get him in the end? Now, I think there's some comparisons here. Like Trent Williams, eventually, these guys misplayed their hand, and it eventually netted them a poor deal for a guy of his caliber. You can go and now, and I know it was a new regime that came in, and they were kind of like, listen, it was Bruce Allen and that group that messed this up, period. And did Ron Rivera handle it well? Well, they only got a third and a fifth. Could you have done something better? Yeah, of course. You could have given him the money at that time, and he probably would have been okay. So, and money is almost always at the issue here. Like Myles Garrett, he wanted out, and that was legitimate. Money solved it, right? Trent Williams, we had when he was here, if you remember, he had like a 20-minute, I mean, he held out. So it was June when it first held out, right? And even at that time, people in the organization, like he wants more money. Clearly, there was a health issue too. Like, do not diminish that. I mean, Trent showed us the scars. He showed us a lot of stuff, shared a lot of stuff on it. For him, there was certainly that. But people here felt like it was really going to be about money in the end. And when he came back, if you remember that year, he had like a 20-minute session with the local media. And it was great. Like I loved covering Trent. I always enjoyed talking to him. He was I really enjoyed covering him. But in that meeting, I was like, well, if had they offered you an extension, would you have signed it? And the answer is yes, because in the end, what you want to be protected. So even if you have hard feelings towards certain people, you're still willing to put that aside in some cases. Now, in the end, he was ready to go. And at a certain point, you get just like, you're ready to go. I don't know where Hendrickson is at with that, but because of all that, but the whole point of it is like, even Myles Garrett, he was willing to go back. And Hendrickson has even said like, yeah, despite how he may feel with the coach, Zach Taylor right now, or the organization, if something happens, like then you start to repair the relationship. but you're happy because you're making 30 some million dollars. I think I'd find a way to be a little bit happy under that scenario. So that is a thing. Like anybody trading for me, it's not just the contract or the cost, it's the contract. And that's where I get to step two for Washington because clearly they would like some more edge rush help. I still don't think they feel it's as dire a need as people outside the organization do, or at least a lot of people outside the organization do. Again, in the end, the pass rush they lost was Dante Fowler. They could have brought him back. They chose not to, folks. They chose not to. So keep that in mind. Anyways, so why would it be a tough situation for a sell for Washington? Well, think of this. And I asked a couple people in the league about this. And so they brought up a good point. Like it would cost to sign him, it would cost, let's say, 30 some million. But for Washington, what else do you have going on that maybe you might want to think twice about it for this reason? You have the Terry McLaurin extension. You have Deebo Samuel here, who would love an extension, I'm sure, here on a 1 year deal. Then you have Laramie Tunsil, who has another year left, but clearly would like, anybody would like an extension. So what happens if you come in and you trade for Trey Hendrickson, you give him this extension, and then you don't do it for these guys? Like people talk to someone here today, like, yeah, the feeling is some guys would probably be upset about that. So is that for sure? I don't know. I can't say. But when these guys, like, this is a business. So if you see someone getting handed a lot of money over here, it's like, wait a minute, why haven't you taken care of me? I'm here, right? I was here. So you just wonder about that scenario. And there are a couple league people, like, that would be something that would put a big yellow caution sign on it for them. The other thing is too that Adam Peters has been very big on the 1 year deals for these kind of for these kind of players, right? At a certain level. Clearly, Hendrickson is a very good pass rusher. He's not a very good run defender. That's what we've seen throughout his career. But he can get after the passer, and they could use that. But in his case, you're paying someone 35 million. It's not a situational pass rusher. You're putting a guy in there who's going to be that defensive end. And so your goal, part of what you want to do is stop the run, right? Now, if you had a chance to sign at Hendrickson, or if you needed it that badly, well, you're gonna look at like, hey, he get the lead. This guy can close out games as a pass rusher. So, not saying that would preclude it, but I do think what they've really emphasized this offseason is clearly stopping the run. So, anyways, um, but what they've done though is like the other pass rushers they were looking at this offseason, it was pretty much 1 year deals. Like that's what they were willing to go to. Like if DeMarcus Lawrence, and I believe for him it was a 1 year offer. He signed a multi-year deal. There was interest shown in Joey Bosa. I don't know if there was actually an offer made, but they clearly it would have been a 1 year deal, right? So that's where same with Khalil Mack. Had he become available, now maybe for him you do a couple years because you probably would have had to, but that I don't know that you're going to go and get a guy like this and extend him that far when you have other things that you need to take care of at this point. So just something to think about for sure. And again, I don't know that. I'm certainly not saying that something is happening. Don't misread it. I'm talking about it because these guys, we all know that they could use maybe another veteran edge rusher for sure. And this is a guy that we know wants to be traded or says that, but of course, if a deal comes through for him, I do believe he would sign it and then put any bad feelings behind him. So anyway, that's where we're at with this. Like I said, I thought it was interesting that a couple different people both said that they would have pause with it because of what else needs to be done with the players here. So, anyways, there you go. And again, the number four thing was again it's the defensive ends on a 1 year that you'd like to get on a 1 year deal. So when you look, I think that's what could still happen. I don't know. Again, this is a quiet bunch. It's not that you don't ever hear anything because sometimes you do, but usually it's going to come from elsewhere. However, like, could I see them doing something? Yes, we still can, and you know that, right? Like, there's still guys out there. Von Miller's out there, Jadeveon Clowney's out there, Zadarius Smith is out there. I think Zadarius Smith, I think would make sense. I don't, would Detroit want him back? There's been talk of that, but Smith makes sense because he can rush inside and outside. Clowney, I think he would make some sense too. I don't think he's in any rush to go somewhere. So I think with some of these guys, you may be that you sign them right before training camp or maybe right before minicamp, something like that, just to get them in here. But that way they're not having to worry about being here in the off season, and they can maybe pick where they want to go, take their time. That again, with Clowney, I was told they're not he's not in any rush, for sure. So anyways, so I think that's I think that to me would be more of of a belief is that going out, or more of a thought would be them going out and getting a guy on a 1 year deal just to help this year. And you're going to have to continue this quest until you find somebody. But they have spent the offseason filling those premium spots, tackle, cornerback, and obviously they have the quarterback and bolstering receiver, because you have to kind of put that in terms of cost analysis. You have to put receiver in that ball game now because Terry McLaurin, what he, again, his contract is up after this year, and that's going to be an interesting one just because he's going to be 30, right? And that always puts a different, value on where receiver is. But Deebo Samuel, expensive, you invested in Jalen Lane. So I think that's going to be something to watch as well. And finally, number five, I think it'll be really interesting to see how Jayden Daniels improves this year. And it's funny because I was talking to, a couple of people this morning about that, like what is it that he can do to improve as a quarterback, right? And I asked somebody who actually played in the league, still in the league, and his comment was like he went right away to the offensive line. So I said, well, what about like just the mechanics of the position? But his thought was just what the offensive line has done or will do if it plays out on paper the way that people hope and expect. What that will do is it'll give Jayden Daniels much more trust in that front. I think it became clear late in the year that whether Jayden would say this or not, I doubt he would, because just knowing him, but he didn't play with that same level of trust. He knew he was going to have to get rid of the ball a certain time, maybe have to look to run by a certain time as well. It's again, he's not a quarterback who is looking to run first, but he can absolutely do it, and he can really hurt a team when he does it. But I think given his druthers, he wants to burn you from the pocket. And that's what I think this group will do. And so that's where this person's like, he's going to, this line will allow him to play with more level of trust. And that can result. Now, will it result in maybe, better stats across the board? Well, maybe more touchdowns, perhaps. Completion percentage, I don't know. That's hard to improve. But I do think like throwing that level of trust will be different. And then, and this is what this guy was talking about too, like you get that quarterback with trust, but now also you get maybe a little bit more time. And with that little bit more time, does that give Deebo Samuel a little bit more time to get into an open area where more space is around him? Same thing for Jalen Lane. Terry McLaurin getting down the field. Noah Brown, don't forget about Noah Brown, like getting down the field. Like Noah Brown was a solid receiver for them last year, and it was a loss for them when he went out. So that's where the line certainly comes into play. And that's why this person felt like the way that he's going to improve is just by having the trust in that group up front. And we won't know how that looks for a few more months, but it is something I felt like was interesting, not just like from the mechanics of the position and just, is it about pre-snap? Maybe you do things pre-snap a little bit differently, a little bit better, because now you've seen more and you can diagnose things faster. But really, this young man is a polished quarterback already. So like he already operated at a veteran level in so many ways. But now with that trust, does that give him the ability to maybe hit some more big plays? And obviously Deebo Samuel, if you get him a little bit more time to get the ball to Deebo Samuel, maybe again, there's more room for him after the catch. Those kind of things will make the offense certainly better, but having that trust behind the group will help Daniels for sure. Anyways, folks, and by the way, I was just going to say that's the end, but it really isn't, because that first game will be a good test for all this, because you're facing the Giants pass rush with multiple ends who can rush the passer. And now you're going to have a rookie tackle. That will be interesting. but you also have a Pro Bowl left tackle, and that will be fun to watch too. So a lot of stuff there, but again, we'll see early on, but as the season progresses, how that all plays out for Jayden Daniels. Anyway, folks, that is it for me. I will be back on Monday with another episode. Believe I'm going to be playing an interview that I had with Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt's college offensive coordinator at New Mexico. This coach, I'm Brian Vincent, also coached Carlin Viggers at Louisiana Monroe, and also coached Jeremy Reeves back in the day, which was a surprise to me. Anyways, folks, thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to you next time.